Welcome to Shift, an exclusive podcast by DSN. I'm your host, Blake Mallon, and this is where high-performing entrepreneurs and experts share their most powerful shifts in mindset, skill set, and strategy to help you accelerate your business and amplify your impact. I challenge you to be present, open your mind, and let the shift begin. You know, Sherilynn, I know a little bit about your story, and I know you have a unique perspective on how you approach, let's just call them challenges, right, and struggles. Mm-hmm. And I think based on the little bit I have heard that maybe that resilience mindset comes from some of the things you had to overcome growing up. And if you're willing to go there and maybe share, can you share with us maybe some of the challenges, the struggles that you were faced with, right, growing up, and how that mindset has maybe helped support you and your business and everything you're doing within your team and your company right now?
Absolutely. So I am a firm believer that your setbacks, those right there become your greatest setups. Your greatest setups in life. And so for me, I was diagnosed with learning disabilities at a really young age. I actually had a brother. He was 2 years older than me. And I very early on realized there was something different about us. He was reading at 2 years younger than I was. I would look at books, I would look at pages, and the words just jumbled together. And, you know, I'm so thankful now they've come a long ways of detecting these things earlier on, but I was 10 years old, Blake, and I still couldn't read. And all they knew back then was to keep holding me back in grades. And I was like, oh my gosh. And, you know, I talked nonstop, had a great vocabulary. I still talk nonstop, never shut up, but I couldn't read and I struggled in dyslexia and other things. And so I hated that. That was what I hated. I always felt different. I always felt not smart. I felt dumb. I felt, insecure. But later I realized that those setbacks actually set me up to create the person I am today. Those setbacks made me who I am today. And I'm actually now at almost 40 years old, thankful for those things because my learning disabilities gave me a work ethic that's unmatched. There's no way I would have done the things I've done now had I not learned to overcompensate, to work extra hard. I knew I would never go in a room and be the most academically smart person. I'm not going to have an academic edge on probably anyone. That's okay. But I could work harder than them. And really, those are the things that I ended up going to college, and I graduated magna cum laude with a 4.0. Wow. 4.0 because I learned how to work. I learned that I would record the lectures and I'd come back to my apartment. I'd take notes and I would have to reteach myself and I'd have to do all these crazy things. But I figured out how to learn. And this is back, and I'm aging myself, but the professor, it was a biology class, had I don't even know what you call those. It was like a projector, like pre-PowerPoint, right? Like a projector where he would write stuff on, but it was a projector. And he had written down what an A student looks like. And it was all the adjectives describing an A student. They're hardworking, they show up, they're diligent, and just these adjectives describing an A student. And then it was like a B student and a C student and a D student and an F student. And I sat there and went, everything about an A student. That is what I want to be. I want to be someone that shows up. I want to be someone that gives my all. And it was kind of that moment that a light bulb went off and I thought, I can do it. I might have to work harder, but why not me? Why can't I? And I even thought back of like Helen Keller. I'm like, she was blind and deaf, went on to speak and to do all these incredible things. And you can look around at so many people that had it even harder than you, that had, even more things that disqualified them, yet they did it. And that actually in that muggy college classroom, I decided I was going to be an A student and I didn't care how hard I had to work. So for me, it was kind of a silly moment, Blake, but it was when a light bulb went off and I said, why not me? And I guess that's what I would say to you is why not you? Instead of letting your excuses or your setbacks be a reason not to, say, no, these are the reasons why. I want to show every little girl or every little boy that's dyslexic that they can do it. Reading might be hard, but who says you can't go on to write a book one day? You can. Why not you?
I love it. And there's no silly moment, right? Wherever we get that inspiration, whatever moment that is in that circumstance that allows us to make that mental shift, like it changes everything. And what I love is it can happen anytime, anywhere, and we can make that shift and then ultimately see where that can go. So fast forward, obviously you've built a massive team multiple times. It's hard enough to hit the top of a rewards plan once, let alone multiple times and multiple accounts. I'm curious, that mindset, right? So that mindset that started there in that muggy classroom, fast forward, can you tell us maybe some of the struggles or challenging moments through your business? I'm sure it hasn't been just an absolute, right, rocket ship straight up. I'm sure there's been ups and downs, peaks and valleys. Give us some examples of maybe in your journey where you had to go back on that mindset to get you over certain setbacks that maybe others are experiencing or will experience.
Okay, so I'll tell you, and there's 4 things that I always had to do, and I always had to kind of actually even re-go there. And so during the beginning of my business, I was kind of all or nothing. So I guess that's like a little pre-tip. That's not one of the 4 things, but that's the pre-tip. I just said, I'm going to go all in, because no matter what you do in life, you've just got to go all in. You've got to go all in. Like, you can't stick in your big toe. You have to jump in the pool and say, I'm doing this, or you never know what you could have done, right? If I halfway did it, I wouldn't know, could I really be successful? Maybe you went all in at the beginning and then time's passed and you've gotten a little burnt out, or you're a little, so now you're only given, That's why you're not seeing the success you did. That's not why you're seeing the fruits of your labor right now. So I would say definitely you have to go all in. So once I decided I'm going all in, there was no looking back. I decided I was doing this for me. I was doing this for my family. I didn't care what anybody else thought. And then as time went on, I was doing this for my team and for their families. And so I always had to remember that. But whenever I set a goal, I knew there was going to be trials, and I knew there was going to be things that would knock me down. But I remember having these 4 things when I was praying that I really felt like the Lord spoke to my heart. And he said, you have to see it, you have to believe it, you have to pray for it, and then you have to work for it. And those 4 things through the 10 years as I was building, I always went back to them. Number 1, I had to see where I wanted to go. I had to have vision. Helen Keller said the only thing worse than not having sight is having sight with no vision. So you have to have vision. So I saw myself reaching the top of the company before I ever did. I saw myself hitting that first promotion long before I ever did. I had to first see it. And I would challenge you, what is that goal right now? What is that next rank you want to hit? What's that next goal you want to achieve? Number 1, you have to see it. And I would even take it a step further, and I would speak it out loud. I would write it down. Anytime you went in my bathroom with dry erase marker, I had my goals on the mirror, and I had to see them first. And then the second thing I had to do after I saw it is I had to believe that I could do it. I had to have that belief. And I think they say it's the 8 inches, 6 inches between your ears. That is the biggest battlefield. You are your own worst critic. Your mind will get in the way, and you have to take those negative thoughts captive, and you have to replace them with the truth. The negative thought comes in, I'm not going there. Replace it with the truth. And for me, my belief came from my faith and knowing I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, knowing that greater is he that is in me than he that's in the world, that my God's power is made perfect in my weakness, because when I'm weak, he's strong. And so I had that belief, but even my faith gave me belief, but then also I would look around. And I would always pause to look around, not to compare myself with other people, but actually to get inspired. You always hear people say, stay in your own lane, put your head down. Actually, I want to stay in my own lane, and then I want to lift my head up, and I want to see who else is winning, and I want to gather inspiration from them. And so I would get belief saying, there's people going to the top of the company. There's people hitting ranks. There's people doing all these things. Why not me? And I would say that to you. Why not you? If other people are doing it, stop counting yourself out. So I had to see, I had to believe, and then I would pray because prayer moves the hand of God. And so I knew I had to get to the end of me before I got to the beginning of him. So I was a firm believer in surrendering my business to the Lord and praying for it. And then lastly, I had to see, believe, pray. And then I had to show up and I had to work for it. And that was hard because I couldn't just work for it the days I felt like it. I had to work for it the days I didn't feel like it. And I had to work based on what I wanted, not even how things looked. It was like, no, I know what I want. I'm going to work for it. I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to show up. And that is how I stayed the course. That is how I reached success. That is how, when I fell down, when I missed a goal, I got back up. I said, okay, time to restart. I have to see, believe, pray, and then put in the work. And that really, I would call that the secret to my success. Like, that is literally what I did in this business, but I do this with everything in my life.
What I love about that is it's simple, and it's something every single one of us listening right now can do, right? So I wrote it down as you were talking: see it, believe it, pray for it, work for it. And you got Sherilynn, she just gave you a direct task, right? So that's not a hypothetical. I heard a literal. What is at least one thing, one goal you have right now? You got to start there, right? So if you're listening right now, pause and think, what is the one thing? And then just follow the framework that Sherilynn just gave. You got to see it. And she gave you very specific, right? See it, write it down, put it on the mirror, journal it. You got to continue to see it until you actually can see it. It goes from fuzzy in your mind to clear, and then believe it. I love the way you said, Sherilynn, too, that you're looking outside for inspiration. Because so often today we fall into this comparison game, and we look outside and see others that are a couple steps ahead of us. And all of a sudden we're comparing their chapter 20 to our chapter 2, and it's having an inverse effect. So I love that you called out that you're drawing inspiration, because if somebody else can do it, you can do it. It's possibility, right? Not comparison. So I think that was huge. Pray for it, right? Faith-based. And work. You got to do the work. You got to do the work. So thank you for that framework. It's simple. We can all apply that. And I hope if you're listening right now, you can apply that immediately to at least one thing in your business.
In your whole career, who have been some of your biggest mentors?
The very first personal development program I ever listened to was from the great late Jim Rohn. And it was building an unshakable character. And I'm so thankful for that now that we've, built a fairly large organization, because character means a lot, as you know. You know what I mean? Making the decision that's best for everybody, even when no one else is looking. No hidden agenda. And so I learned that early on. And even, people would say, probably if they looked at the decisions I made early on in my business, why would you invest in others before you even made money yourself for your own household? And it was because I learned about putting others first, eating last as a leader. And so those programs helped me out. I had one person, Blake, only one person who's a friend of the family, who was an entrepreneur. No one else in my family was an entrepreneur. So that was tough, because my mom worked for the government. My dad drove the Metro bus, which is the DC transit system. So they weren't negative, but they were protective, because it was an unknown for them. So I could have defined it as negative, but I didn't. I said, I know they're being protective. They were like, babe, you need security in your life. 2 weeks check, 2 weeks check. And then for me, that's not securities. Security, someone telling me what I'm worth, isn't secure, because that means someone can tell me what I'm not worth. And so I wanted to get paid what I was worth. And it wasn't the mall's fault for paying me $40,000 a year. It was my fault for accepting what I thought I was worth more than. So that's, so that mentor, that friend of the family, really helped me in terms of goal setting. I'd never set a goal. Here I am, 25. I'd never set a goal in my life. I'd say, I wish I would wish for this. I'd want for that. And I can't wait for that, but I thought that was a goal. That wasn't a goal. There's no date attached to it. There was no plan, and a wish is not a good strategy, as you know. So having him a part of my life, he's just a great man. His name is Howard Brooks. And he really, helped me to understand what goal setting was all about. So him, the great late Jim Rohn. Then I started to go to these seminars. I was going to see John C. Maxwell when he was only speaking at small churches, just before arenas. So he was speaking at churches in Northern Virginia, and I was going to see him there at churches. So it was funny. Now that I think about, the arenas that Tony Robbins and all these guys speaking, I'm like, man, what an honor and a privilege. I had a chance to see these guys when they were in smaller rooms and intimate settings.
I love that. And we share a belief in a lot of these leaders and a lot of common mentors for sure. I love your perspective saying that, things happen for a reason, and you may not realize those reasons when you're in the moment. Sometimes the dots kind of connect in the future. I'm curious, is there any kind of defining moment in your journey as an entrepreneur that when you were in the moment at that point in time, you were like, why is this happening to me? Like, it seemed horrible. It seemed negative. It was one of those sky is falling, where it was easy to maybe slip into kind of like, why is me, that later on, whether that was a year or 10 years or 20, like later on, you realized was an absolute blessing. Or are there any of those defining moments that you could share with us?
How long is this episode? I can go on and on. I actually have a podcast where one of the episodes is called Connecting the Dots. And that's why I was smiling so big when you said that. The whole episode is about connecting the dots. And you are spot on. Like when I was a child, they had this game, this workbook, and it was a bunch of dots, right? And it was 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you connected and you went in order, it would form a picture. Well, when you're on number 4, for an example, and it's 32 dots, you can't see the full picture. You're like, why in the heck am I connecting this dot? But in the end, you realize that every dot mattered. And you're spot on, Blake. I can tell you about like August. I joined my company in September of 1998. August of 1998, my car was repossessed. And I borrowed money from my mother to save my home from foreclosure. And my mom said this to me, Blake. She says, babe, I love you. And, I'll do anything to help you. And this is all that mom has. And it crushed me because she's retired at this point. And I'm thinking, man, I'm taking her retirement to save my home. And I mean, I guess it didn't crush me too much because I took the money, but it crushed me in terms of my spirit. And she's never said the words, I'm disappointed in you, ever. I felt like I was disappointing her though. And that was the point. That was a dot. I didn't understand at that point. But what I did not realize, Blake, was that so many people would join me on this mission. And they've had a moment where finances were tough, and they've had a moment where their esteem was low, and they've had moments where they felt like, man, how am I going to get through this month? And so it's allowed me to speak with people, not at people. And unintentionally, I've heard a lot of leaders speak at people. It's almost insensitive and belittling, like you're so irresponsible. How could you ever put yourself in that position? And it's only because they don't understand. They've never been there. And it's not their fault. They've just, they've never walked that walk. And so I'm thankful now because it's allowed me to relate to people who have nothing, who start with absolutely nothing, who start with the lowest self-esteem, who start like, I didn't even want to talk to people. I'm so disingenuous to talk about an opportunity and I don't even have a car. I don't even know how I'm going to pay my bills. I know what that feels like. You know what I mean? And so that dot allowed me to relate to even more people than I ever knew. And so, again, I wouldn't have asked for that. I wouldn't have said, God, please, put me through this situation. But that dot essentially allowed me to build the organization we have today because and I know there's a lot of people out there suffering and they don't want to be kicked while they're down. They need someone to say, hey, listen, it's okay. Because tomorrow does not have to look like today. And the day before everything changes looks exactly the same. But you have to feel differently. So that's, so that's just one of the many dots, Blake. I promise you this episode could be 3 hours. A lot of dots.
Well, Darnell, I had a feeling, and it's just a fact that you don't get as far as you have gotten for as long as you have been there without going through those dots, as you're saying, or those perspectives. And I think depending on where our listeners are at, because we may have someone listening to this that just joined this industry for the first time yesterday, or someone that's been at it for 30 years. But something I see, and I'm sure you see the same thing, is people don't give themselves the time.
Yeah.
In order to figure out why they're going through what they're going through. They go through it, they get knocked out of the game. They go through it and here's something, it creates doubt and they quit, right? They go through a shift, and we're going to get talking about shifts in the season we're in, because we're in a season of shifts right now. And all of a sudden they get knocked out of the path that they're meant to be on. Yeah. Right. And your story is so powerful. And I'm so excited we're bringing this in early episodes because it's a story. Yeah. Loyalty, consistency, persistency, going through the stuff is what everybody has to go through, right? In order to achieve the level of success you've had. Let me ask you this, and then we can kind of shift to some of the, the disruptive, evolution we're seeing today. But I'm curious, because we've all seen in this industry, someone goes through that dot, that shift, that change, that doubter, and they get knocked out of the game, or they feel like they have to go a different lane, right? Or a different direction, or try something totally new. And I'm willing to bet for you to do what you've done, as long as you've done it, you've had to reinvent yourself in the same place. So talk to me about, like, instead of having to change your environment or change your story or find a new vehicle, how do you reinvent yourself in the same place over and over and over again to stay relevant and consistent? Would love your insight there.
Yeah. So when you're clear on what you want, you also become clear on what you don't want. If you're not crystal clear on what you want, any distraction will cause you to think you may want something else. So I knew exactly what I wanted. And I had people around me who held me accountable for what I said I wanted. And I still do today, in all areas of my life, by the way. So I have accountability partners in my spiritual life. I have accountability partners in my fitness life. I have accountability partners with my business and personal development, and they hold me accountable. Hey, what'd you get out of the chapter today? And my gosh, if I didn't read, what am I going to say? Oh, it was good. That's how you know someone didn't read, by the way, Blake. It's like, oh, yeah, it was good. Right? So my point is that accountability, being clear on what I want. And when I'm clear on what I want, I know that I'm not getting it where I am. So it causes me to get in different rooms with different people so that I can take that value back to the lane I'm currently in or on. So here's my point. I don't have to change direction because my goal is still my goal. But sometimes I have to figure out what shift needs to happen in order to keep me on track with reaching my goals. If we continue to move forward in a direction where we're not receiving results over a period of time, we start to doubt whether those results will ever be achieved. Or if we have frequent what we define as failures on the way to our goal, then we start to doubt. So either frequency or length of time. This is what causes us to sometimes shift lanes and shift directions. And hopefully I can help out because I've been there where I'm like, am I crazy to think this will ever work? Especially after 4 years, right? Because it was 4 years before I really had results. And people often ask, what did you do the month that it all changed? I didn't do anything different. Just 4 years caught up. 4 years of consistency, 4 years of sowing seed, 4 years of cultivating, 4 years of attending events and learning more, 4 years of sharpening my axe. So I just kept showing up when people stopped. I kept sharpening my axe when people stopped. I kept sowing seed when people stopped. So it wasn't like I did anything different. I didn't get off the highway. I may have gone to the slow lane instead of the fast lane, but I was still heading in the right direction the entire time. So I think that's what really helped me out is that I have attended different events, even now, because of social media and different ways that I market today. I've invested in myself in mastermind events, et cetera, so that I can reinvent myself, reinvent my personal brand so that I can still be attractive in an environment where people are looking for something different than they were 20 years ago.
I love it. And, I've found that to be consistent in the top earners, top achievers, top leaders in our channel. It's you got to learn to reinvent yourself where you are, right? Yep. In order to continue to give yourself the time to reach the potential of where you are. And so often we just get distracted and we're bouncing onto different things. And I see people making the mistake of constantly like going back to new starting lines. You're never going to get to your finish line if you're constantly going back to new starting lines. What advice do you give when you're putting that coach hat on and you see somebody in your community that's in their version of that same point, right? They're stuck in supposed to, they're stuck in traditional, they're worried about what somebody might think, right? But they have that part of them that thinks maybe this could work for them. What
What directive, what coaching do you give that person today?
To completely disrupt your social circle and your social cycle. It's funny, you did mention my book. There's a chapter in my book about disruption and pattern disruption. And for us, we had to move out of our small town. We had to move away from our church friends. We had to get ourselves in a bigger circle because we knew the patterns, Tia, that we would fall back into. Yeah. And so we wanted change and growth so bad to create a different future for our kids that we said, if we don't do it now, we know our habits. We know that we will end up, coming and shrinking back.
We had to shift. I mean, I think that's the first question we ask. And I ask when someone's like on the cusp of, I see their breakthrough, because that's just my typical personality is I can see the potential in someone. And it's like inviting them to say, what if you were to like really go all in, really live your life out loud, really kick some fear down, because everything you want is on the other side. And so that was the invitation that my mentor did to me, because I was living in the past. I was looking in the rearview mirror, dictating my whole life from the rearview mirror. And she says, like, what if you were really to make the decision to go all in? And I remember that invitation from my mentor. And so I always have to ask permission. Can I have permission to speak really direct into your life? And if you take these steps with me, I'm not going to have you do it alone. We're going to do this together. If you take these steps with me, I'm not going to promise, but I'm going to tell you through time and through consistency, you can create the life that you desire.
Tia, thinking about that, most people don't make a change without making a drastic, all of a sudden, for us, we had to move not just across town, but 2 years later, we moved to Arizona.
States.
We had to put ourselves in a completely different environment. A lot of the,
and Doug, not to interrupt you, but was that the main intention of why you guys moved? Was just new environment, new circle, bigger thinking? Was that the driver of the move?
I started dealing with depression in Portland. I had nothing to be depressed about. I started hanging out with the same old friends, and they were saying things about me like, oh, how long is it going to last? And now if you're listening to this, 15 years, yep, I'm still doing that little thing. And so, now it's a little bit of like there's a righteous anger in me of like, hey, scoreboard 15 years later. But when you make a drastic change, when you want to do something, it takes a drastic decision that can allow for zero compromise. I believe small incremental change help build and form new habits. Yeah. And people are like, oh, I'm just going to take it one step at a time. Yes, take it one step at a time. But when you say I am doing this, it takes commitment, it takes decision, it takes action, and it takes a surge of momentum to catapult your life, whether it be into a different circle or a different income bracket or a different health place in your life. And then from there, you start building new small incremental change and habits to maintain or improve upon that. But to do it, you just got to go. You just got to do it.
I love the energy behind that, because we've all heard like you become like those you surround yourself with, right? Look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Like, and I believe, don't misunderstand me, I believe all that's true, but it's rare that you hear, no. You are so committed to changing that circle that you relocated, right, in a totally different state just to shift that environment. I love the energy, Doug and T, you're giving on disrupt, right, create radical change. So let's say someone is willing to make that shift, right? They got the identity thing they're facing. This is the path. Direct selling, building a community is a path they're on. 15 years, I know it wasn't all easy for you guys, right? I mean, I'm sure there are ups, I'm sure there were downs, highs, lows. One word that a lot of guests have been sharing recently is this word resilience. Seems to be kind of like a word that's in the air. My question to you guys is, okay, you made the decision, you made the move, you started to grow. Tell me about a moment where like your resilience was really tested. Like, and what did you do in that moment to actually keep going, right, and get you to where you guys are today?
I would say I'll add to the conversation in that the resilience when we moved. So we had moved across town. We sold everything in our area. We had garage sales. We sold everything, moved to another part of town and lived there for 2 years. But when we made the move here to Arizona, it took a lot of resiliency, because we had a season where our business went back a little bit and where we thought, we were on this trajectory, it was growing, and we had to push through those limiting beliefs and thought process. I had to put myself in new rooms. I had to, get way outside my comfort zone. I remember at the time starting to go to new Bible studies, new running groups and things like that. I was creating a whole new circle here in the Valley. And so I had to really push past those limiting beliefs that I had back in Oregon. They didn't leave me there. They came with me here to Arizona. I had to really confront those beasts. So that was one of the big times I remember I had to really press in.
Tia, what were some of those beliefs? You mentioned limiting beliefs. When you say you had to confront them, what were some of the big ones?
Oh, that I wasn't enough, that I really couldn't be the leader that the people needed around me, that I didn't deserve to have the life that I saw behind my eyes, like it wasn't attainable. A lot of it was, my area that the enemy of my future, the enemy of my soul likes to keep me small is just saying, Tia, you're not enough for this. You don't have the right words. You're not eloquent enough. And so I had to confront those beasts like big time. There was days I had to just get up, put on my high heels, put on the hat, put on the lip gloss and just show up in the room, even though I was shaking, but I knew I was called to be in that room. I knew this city, I was called to be in this city. And I knew success I was called to be successful. I just had to retrain that narrative that I was trying to creep back in.
Doug, you were going to jump in.
Well, something that T and I, looking back at a 15-year, what the industry or anyone would say is a very successful career in direct sales. And it is. But we've refused to get comfortable. And every 1 to 2 years, we feel ourselves getting comfortable at a new level. There's a lot of people that end up getting broke at a new level because they spend their bonus, and they start living off of that. But, I look at 2.5 years ago, T and I do live a very blessed life. We, by the world standards, we have a lot. But that's not who we are. That's just stuff. Yeah. When you feel yourself going through the motions and things are getting easy, that makes us nervous when things get too automated. I always say, you can automate things and programs, just don't automate people. And when you find yourself starting to automate relationships and make it, I got to figure a way to systematize this, depending on the service that you're in or that, what you bring to others, be very careful if you're in a relationship business and you're over systematizing things. But 2.5 years ago, we moved out of our luxury home in North Scottsdale. We put it on the Airbnb market and we moved where we're sitting at right now, recording this podcast, which is a very nice luxury apartment in downtown Scottsdale. It's a high rise. We live in a 3-bedroom apartment and our office is one of them. We've simplified, but what that did was we found ourselves in North Scottsdale away from everybody, got all this land, all this property, we got the toys, but yet we were alone. Yeah. We felt like God said, go move to the city where I called you now 10 years ago. At the time, it was 8 years ago, and go and get involved in the city. You're always online, which is great. You're always on Instagram. You're everywhere, but go and serve this city and go disrupt your comfort of this beautiful home and go live in an apartment. And we've done that. And I can tell you, Blake, the relationships, the community, the people that have been breathing into us, the networking, the people that I've met since we've chosen to leave comfort of a beautiful home and move into this apartment complex of movers, shakers, people that are doing things. I tell you, it completely disrupted our pattern and it really catapulted us into a whole, what would you say, Tia? Growth and trajectory.
New realm of impact of, it's shown us where we could up level and grow.
Yeah.
And when people ask how we have the life we have, because we've been willing to do the things that most people won't do. And so that's always my invitation in this industry is, are you willing to do the things that most people won't do so you can leave your mark on this world, so you can leave an impact?
And whether you're on the way up or when you're up, you feel like you're on top, are you willing to actually let that go for a season and step back to maybe something that you're thinking like, whoa, why would you step back? Well, maybe it was a step back so we could take a huge step forward. We still don't know. We're in the middle of it, but we are loving it. And we're so grateful for constantly analyzing and doing a little bit of a pulse check saying, it's getting a little too easy on us. Let's disrupt something and prepare for what's to come.
in this business, we talk about challenges, right? We talk about the challenges we face. We talk about, the news sometimes people say to us. And here you are, like, I mean, you got the toughest news that anybody could imagine ever getting just a few months ago. Like, can you take me to that moment? I don't know if I've asked you this or I've heard you say this directly to, I don't know if it was the first doctor when those results came back. Like, how did that conversation go? What did they say? What was your first response? If you can go to that moment, I'd love if you share.
Yeah. So first I want to go back to what you said about, you don't know how you would process it if it happened to you. And the interesting thing is it's not anything you could ever prepare for. So anybody, like, it's not going to look like you expected it to. I don't think, of course, maybe there's an anomaly to that, but it's interesting because I went directly to, when you said that, I thought about how you would probably think about your kids and your wife. Like, you don't actually think about the businesses that you have. You don't think about your responsibilities in whatever your network marketing business is, or you don't think about these things. You're thinking about legacy. And for me, it stopped me in my tracks because I'm not married, don't have kids. And my legacy currently is all the people I've impacted through business, which God bless has been a lot, but it makes you stop and think. So it was actually my maybe fifth oncologist. I had been diagnosed already. Obviously, I knew that I had cancer. I knew it was colon cancer. I had even already had surgery at this point in time, but nothing had been staged yet, because in order for you to actually be staged, you have to have pathology back. So everything has to be, they do all the stuff under the microscope or whatever. And pathology came back by the time I went to this doctor, and they had taken, along with, 15 inches or something like that of my small intestine, large intestine, and the cecum where the two meet, and my appendix. They had taken 30 lymph nodes for purposes of pathology. And at that time, they had just found out that 26 of the 30 lymph nodes had come back positive. And they also had just received a PET scan that said it had metastasized to my throat, my neck, and my trachea, which is really far from the site of the cancer, which is why they staged me as stage 4. So thank God it had not traveled to any of my organs, which just means that my lymph nodes are doing their job. It's trying to stop the cancer from spreading. But my response is really interesting. And you noted, maybe the business and all this personal development through network marketing may have affected my mindset and my approach to this. And you could not be more correct. We can go deep into this if you want to, because I hope more and more people get their people to events. I hope more and more companies and reps and everybody start bringing in people who are really thought leaders, who teach people that this is the real weapon in business. Because I think we have a crisis happening right now in network marketing where people might be great at selling. They might be great at social media. They might be great at recruiting people, but they are not mentally tough. Like I remember breaking boards 12 years ago. Like, why are we karate chopping boards? Like, not understanding at the time what was going on, or even just any of these big speakers that would come in. I'm like, whoa, what are we? And now I think back on that. I don't know, that's making me emotional to think about, but I think back on all those moments, because when I'm told, oh, you're going to die by October, which if you're listening, we're in the middle of August right now, right? You might be listening in October. Check my social media.
You had a doctor tell you, you had a doctor literally tell you that?
Like a star oncologist. Yep. Like I paid $17,000 out of pocket. Again, thank you for my profession that I'm part of course, to get a out of insurance, immediate appointment at the top cancer hospital in America. And went to this star oncologist, and he said, no, I see this every day. People are getting younger and younger, and they're just dying faster and faster. You have until October. You're not seeing Christmas. And if you do, and then he gave me like this plan. He's like, maybe we can get you 2.5 years. And my brain started going places, even in that first meeting with this guy, first and last meeting with this guy. It went to Jessie Lee. There are a lot of things you have seen in your life before they ever happened. How is this any different? Like, I've seen myself walking across the stages. I've seen myself collecting awards. I've seen myself as top rank. I've seen myself fill in the blank when it comes to success. I saw all those things. I created those things. I learned to do this through network marketing and all these events. I visualized things, and the thoughts became the things, the physical, tangible things in my life through my career. Well, my brain went to, why is this different? This is the same thing. Gather the information, learn what you need to learn, find out the skills, and get to work. And so I've been treating cancer completely differently than most people that I know. Not all people. I've met some amazing people through the journey, but I've been treating it as something that's like, you got something to conquer, girl. Like, let's get to work.
I appreciate you being so open and strong. I mean, the ability not only to take the time to share, but share with the energy that you're sharing with all of us. And I'm having you do that for everybody that's listening, not just so you understand where Jessie is coming from and what she's in the middle of right now, but because I do think there's parallels. And I think you said it perfectly, JL. It's like, we all have our own challenges. And we all also sometimes think the challenge that's right in front of us right now is like the biggest challenge in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you are facing, I can say this, the biggest challenge in the world. I mean, I can't say I've ever faced anything that large, right? I think most of the listeners, and maybe some, have had to navigate health scares and health situations, or have had loved ones go through, and you can relate maybe even more closely. But like, you're going through the fight of your life right now. And it's just, it's inspiring to watch how you're showing up and how you're applying the same things that this industry and channel has given you, the mindset, the discipline, the tenacity, right, to overcome this challenge. Like you said, just like all the challenges that you have to get to where you are on a professional and business level. So I just want to say it's been completely inspiring. What have you learned? Like, is there anything in the last, 6 months or so, going deeper on that mindset conversation? Is there any sort of like shifts that you're really anchoring to how you're showing up every day in your health that might have come from your business in direct selling, that might also be applied to everybody that's listening here as they overcome their own challenges they're in the middle of? I'm curious.
The word parallel that you used is perfect. It is an exact parallel. It's just, I'm in a parallel universe, right? So, you've seen me work. You've seen how disciplined I am. You've seen how I approach meetings or calls or anything, fill in the blank, right? This is the same. It was like, okay, if I didn't have the skills, what did I do back then? Well, I would reach out to people who did. Well, so then I started reaching out to stage 4 cancer survivors and asking what they did, and gathering resources and gathering more skills. How do you become a great salesperson? You learn from great salespeople. You read sales books, you go to sales conferences, you go to your company conference, and you pay attention to sales classes. Like, I wasn't good at any of this either. And then I've just become like a purveyor of as many skills and conversations and knowledge. And like, we've had some biohacking conversations, not even related to cancer. I'm like, oh yeah, I do that, Blake. Oh yeah, I do that too. Yeah, I do that too. You're like, my God, what does she not do? It's like, well, I'll do everything. I'll do anything it takes because I'm up for the challenge.
I think it's so powerful. And I think your story, and you sharing your story as openly as you are, it gives every listener, and I'm sure everybody that's listening right now, an instant perspective shift, because it causes you to put up a mirror and say, okay, well, this is how you're showing up in the fight that you're in. This is how you're applying what you've learned through your experience in this channel. How can we all grab strength from that, inspiration from that, and apply that to the journey that we're on? And it almost makes us feel kind of silly when we're saying, oh, I'm worried about, my prospect and what they might think, and how they might think I'm crazy, or they might think this won't work, or so-and-so, might look at me funny. We're worried about what they may think or what they may say showing up. And then we let those opinions actually affect how we feel about what we're doing or how we feel about ourselves. I think it's powerful. And I also want to highlight, it's been interesting because I've watched you get the news. I've watched you process that. And I've watched you now, what you're doing on a day-to-day. And it could have been very easy for you in this situation right now to kind of like check out of everything and just say, you're going to focus on your health. You're going to focus on healing. Your regimen and discipline is crazy right now. But you haven't done that. And I want everybody to hear this because it's the truth. I'm watching you double down on your business, right? You're doubling down on your business. You're doubling down on your impact. You're doubling down on your content. I know you stepped into a brand new VP role of field development and performance. So you're taking on more. You're balancing your team, and now you're helping train, right, and inspire and put systems across your company. This is just a real question, because nobody would think twice if you're like, I got to take a break and I got to focus on me. What's making you double down on business right now while you're juggling all of this?
I guess it's kind of a complicated answer. It's like I've always talked about working smarter, not harder, like everybody talks about, but I'm really doing that now. So I've become a master of my schedule more than ever. I used to talk to unqualified leads just because I'm like, whatever, put me in the three-way. I was like, this person's not qualified. I do not have 30 minutes for them. I absolutely do not. Right. So business can progress forward by actually working much, much smarter. The system, the legacy thing that you mentioned, or the impact, I think you said, it really was the double down on impact. I realized that if I brought the whole entire company together and I showed them exactly what's scaled my businesses to be where my businesses are, well, everybody can thrive as well. I do say no to a lot more. So am I taking vacations every 2 seconds, and am I on beaches and doing whatever right now? No, but I also can't really leave Dallas too much anyhow, because they don't have access to all the stuff I need to have access to in regards to my health. So what am I going to do? Sit around my house and mope and cry and complain and stop living my entire life? Like, if I tell you I don't accept a prognosis, then I don't accept a prognosis, which means I don't accept being told I'm going to die. And it's interesting because it's like, do I accept the diagnosis? Yeah, I get it. It's science. Okay. It's colon cancer. But I don't need to accept the fact that I'm going to die. I don't need to accept the fact that this is the end of the game for me. No. And so if you have that mindset, then you can go into the business and say, doing this call has never served the team. We're not doing it anymore. Doing this stresses me out. I'm not doing that anymore. Serving at a really high level really inspires me and actually brings me energy. So what you get to see is me doing a lot of stuff that brings me a ton of energy and putting even more systems in place. And something that's always motivated me has always been the impact, has always been helping people. It's never been about me recruiting everyone in the profession. I've always been a safe person for people to turn to for anything, because I've never gone after people. It's like, make millions of dollars in your company. Like, I don't mind showing you how. Let's go. But it's the same. It's another just parallel. The accepting of the diagnosis and not the prognosis, you could say about direct sales network marketing. You can accept what I accept that people don't like what we do. I accept that people say only this % of people make this much money, blah, 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 blah. But I never accepted that I wasn't going to be that person. I never accepted that I wasn't going to be the top in the profession. I never accepted that I wasn't going to win. I said, oh, so you're saying that some people succeed at this? Well, you're saying some people have radical remission, right? I'm just treating it the exact same way. Like, I've never even said that before, but I run my life a certain way, and I didn't want to shut down. I didn't want to turn off the businesses when I don't work my businesses because I have to. I love what I do. If I get joy and energy and peace and enlightenment and impact and legacy and happiness and whatever out of me showing up and teaching and training and coaching and whatever, well, then wouldn't I be kind of stupid to say, oh, what I've wanted to do all along is go blah, blah, blah. No. I don't think you understand. My network marketing business that I've treated like a profession since day one has already provided me countless trips. How many trips have I been on? I don't know. I've done this business and it's provided me this life. Why am I going to hang it up and be like, thanks, network marketing. We had a good run. Now I'm over you. Like, I'm not over it. It provided me this. And we're all going to die someday. Let's just be honest about it. Have you built the business that you're going to be so proud of that you get to will to whoever? I've always had that thought in my mind. Well, if I continue to build this thing and create as much impact as possible, the impact and the legacy that I can pass down will be a lot bigger than if on February 17th, I said, oh, I have cancer. The end. We're done. I'm just going to do kumbayas around campfires from now on. Like, who does that serve? No one, including me, because that's not what brings me joy.
I literally have chills just hearing you say all of that. And, I was taught something early in my career. I had a mentor once say, well, Blake, if you had all the time and all the money in the world, like, what would you do? And it was a question that would try to put you in a state to really ask, like, what are you most passionate about, right? In other words, so many people show up every day and they're in a career or a job or, some sort of work that they're doing it time for money, doing it for a paycheck. But when you remove those, right, time and money, it gets to, well, what moves you? what I just got hit with in your story, JL, with you sharing all of that, is an even deeper question. And it's the question you're living right now. It's if a doctor showed up tomorrow and said, you only have X many days to live, what would you do? And what I'm hearing from you, and not just hearing on this conversation, what we're seeing, right, live out in the world of social media and the world of business, is you are choosing to double it down on what you were already doing, not to make more money. You've done that, right? But because you're passionate about this channel, you're passionate about making an impact. And number one, I applaud you. But number two, for all the listeners out there, have you gotten in touch so deeply with why you are in this channel, why you show up every day, why you're having conversations with your customers and prospects, that if you were put in the situation that Jessie Lee is in right now, you'd be doing the same thing, because that's the level of commitment that it takes to get to where you want to go. So Jay, I'm going to reframe that question for me. It's like, I mean, it's the truth. And, thank you for being you and showing us all what it's like to show up every day and like live your passion and make an impact.